incipient, let's say Parkinson's disease, like there can be asymmetric swelling, and then you can say like this much of asymmetric swelling if they're in this phase, and that means like so this may be a trajectory towards Parkinson's or any other thing, right? So this is all depends on data. So now the technology is so developed that we can do very useful things like retina images, and then you can classify it to the age, biological sex, smoking or non-smoking people, or any kind of early blood pressure, or any other type of diabetes and things like that, right? So even weight. So Google AI is really is ahead of other competitors about just taking retina images and then saying medical doing medical diagnosis very accurately. So this has been really a trend now in even India and then across the globe. So the medical field will be really revolutionized by this kind of AI technologies. So I'm sure you have heard of ChatGPT and this. These are just massive networks called GPT because it's generative and pre-trained and transformers, right? So generative means like once you train these networks called large language models with billions of data, when you have new instances, they can creatively generate conclusions that are very intelligent, right? So it is just like our human brain would we go through let's say 4 years of undergraduate education, 2 years of masters, and another 4 years of PhD. During those 10 years we just train our brain, and then we go to the industry or some professional service. When we encounter new examples, we can generatively take conclusions and professional conclusions. Exactly like that, generative AI, once trained, it can behave like professionals, right? So that is a recent breakthrough due to a lot of computing power available recently, and they are pre-trained and then transformers. So what transformers are, transformers is the latest, most powerful engine of computing. So what it does is it has 3 features, right? So one is if you, let's say, write a poem about the evening sky, so it first understands the sequence, right? So first it labels the sequences. So write is 1, a poem is 2, what, write what, and then about what, and then things like that. So it breaks it down to some sequence. And then the second 2 interesting features that was discovered very recently was attention. So how to pay attention to some information within the question itself, and then that gives you the answer, right? So the first attention is to the structure. Pays attention to the possible structures of the solution each element in the sequence relates to out of all the structures it knows, right? For example, it is asking write a poem. Poem has the clue to the structure of the answer, right? So it is not an essay, it is a poem. So, and it says, okay, now all the poetry I know is what is relevant to this solution. Essays, I can just forget about it, right? And then it pays attention to the context of the question. So it's self-attention to the meaning of each element in the sequence in its context. For example, evening is giving a context to the sky, right? And then now I had to write a poem. I know how to write poems. And then about what? About sky, but the context is evening. So, and then it is paying attention, by layer, and then it knows, okay, now I know about, I have billions of images about the evening sky and the sky, and then now I have to write a poem about all those images, and then it just goes, retrieves all the structures that, written by various poets, I know, and then it writes because it's generative, it can write a poem. that poem, looks and sounds very, very natural. So that's the important thing. Okay, so I talked about robots. I briefly talked about generative AI, and then the new trend just a couple of years ago, this OpenAI company signed an agreement with physical robotic company R1X. So now it used to be till last year. It used to be that generative, all these large language models, you have to feed all the poems or newspaper articles and everything. You have to manually enter this data, right? The computers don't know any other information other than what you fed to it, right? So you can upload billions of papers, newspapers, articles, and all these things. That is what is just training data. But when these kind of large language models are run on physical robots don't need your data. It can gather its own data like humans, right? So like evolution. They can walk around, talk to people, and then say things, and then just look at your facial expression, and then it immediately understands. So if I say that, people do that, right? And then that is their response, right? So now I know what they do, how to be polite, how to talk with a girl, how to impress let's say a CEO, and how to be sitting in a board meeting and then taking decisions about strategy and all that. This speed is phenomenal. This is going to be, people don't understand how rapidly this can grow to superhuman intelligence. Humans cannot compete with this, impossible, right? Because a single brain, the single human can do a limited things like lifetime we learn something, but these robots, the difference is they will exchange information faster than we do, right? So let's say the one robot in Africa will tell all other robots in all the whole world, because they are networked, and individual robots will know the entire world, because these millions and billions of robots learning in parallel by exchanging information that we don't do. So we human race took that turn about 5,000 years ago when education was introduced, right? So once knowledge was transferred to other people, and then that completely revolutionized the human race from other animals. This is happening now, so to robots, right? So it is in a couple of 3 years from now, you will see the result. And then this is going to be trillions of dollars of industry. That is why Tesla is up to this, and Google and all these big companies are making humanoid robots. And Google, we know Alphabet company Intrinsic launched this thing, and then Thorsten Kruger, my colleague, he's the CTO of, and he's a very brilliant person. And we all talk very frequently about the future, and then Google Health and Meta, and everybody is really working hard on that. And then I don't know how, words are not enough to explain you how fast this is moving. So it's literally a daily growth. So generative AI to become a 1.3 trillion market is a conservative estimate by 2032. And then literally every university has to teach undergraduate students these things, otherwise they will go kind of obsolete. So now the next question, will they take our jobs, right? This question everybody asks me all the time. The answer is no. So they are going to create jobs, and at a rate that we cannot think of. So like if we go back to our Stone Age, right? So we were just like animals, right? So we were the weakest animal in the forest. We couldn't even compete with the deer, for example. Like a lion, lions can hunt much better than us, and then tigers could hunt much better than us. The moment we discovered a tool to hunt, we became as competitive as a lion. as the weakest animal in the forest, right? So our babies cannot survive just like, giraffes or like chimpanzees or anybody. They are much, much stronger than our babies. Like, so our babies, if they're not fed, like they die. But from such weakness to a hugely competitive animal, we came a long way from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age just by using tools. Tools made us stronger and stronger and more powerful. And the moment we, more tools we invented, the more diverse the job market became, right? So once we were all hunters, and then there's only one job, and then when the tools came, some were hunters and some were agrarians and agriculturists, and then some were like, doing research about agronomy and all that knowledge base. And then when we, in the 17th century, with the advent of this energy conversion principles and then the steam power, the job market by this time was like almost uncountable, right? So the number of jobs people could do, medicine to engineering to accountants and lawyers and all that, none of that was heard of at Stone Age. So every invention of technology just created more jobs that were not there. Did they take jobs? Yes, they did, right? So all these tools took our job of hunting, right? So we lost that job, of course, right? We lost our hunting job. And then did we lose our agriculture job? Yes, we did, right? So most of us are not, farmers, right? Today, there are few farmers. So it is, yes, all the old jobs are disappearing, but new jobs are coming in. And then all the AI and communication. So this is happening so rapidly. So why would Sri Lanka be interested in these things, right? So Sri Lanka can use AI to do precision agriculture and use less chemicals and just precisely administering chemicals where it is needed. And then our belief, for example, is that you can cut down about 20% of what we are using now using robots. Right? So if you do precisely measured interventions, you can reduce the chemical usage. And the precision agriculture is something I'm working on. I'll explain later. So what it means is like you can do soil monitoring, and then you can plan irrigation and then crop monitoring and analyze market demands and then just produce what is needed and don't waste without wasting anything, right? So if you can predict what is demanded in about 5 months' time, then the growers know exactly what they should be growing right now, at what quantities, and then at what quality, and then they know the prices in the market. And automated pest control and automated weeding can clearly reduce chemicals. For example, pest control. Now there's laser interventions, like so you can laser, with precision, you can destroy weed, and then that weed can again be composted as fertilizer, and with laser accuracy. And then Sri Lanka has a lot of underwater scenery, and then how many people see these things? No, right? You had to be a diver to see that natural beauty of underwater sea beauty in Sri Lanka. But Sri Lanka has a huge potential to deploy robots, underwater robots, and then allow people to remotely experience the underwater scenery, like it's remote tourism, underwater tourism. No other country can do this. Like so, corals, the beautiful. I'm coming from Goa, and then the Unawatuna beach is so famous and beautiful because of the corals, and then the beautiful fish there. Right. So out of some, I don't know the exact numbers, like so 30 most rarest species of fish are in that coral. Right. So in the Unawatuna coral. So people will pay anything to see that, right? So, but without destroying the natural environment there, like without diving, you without destroying the coral, you can deploy robots, and then with those cameras, very high resolution cameras, somebody can just wear VR goggles and experience just by being, just imagine, the world population is 8 billion people now. Even if 1 billion people subscribe to some kind of a VR app like that, it just like $10 annum, nothing, right? Spotify is like about $15 annum, and then anybody would pay $10 to see Sri Lankan underwater beauty live and interactively. That is how many billions, right? So $10 billion right there. So Sri Lanka can think about these things, and it can add value by Sri Lanka has the southern coast has the highest density of shipwrecks from Portuguese time to Dutch and English. Spanish ships have huge value in underwater shipwreck tourism is a specialized form of tourism, and then some tourists come just to dive to see their ancestors, like the ships of Portuguese and Dutch people. They just come to dive to see the shipwreck of their ancestors, and then these can be annotated and then displayed remotely. Somebody can just log into this robot, drive the robot for a premium price, right? So you don't have, if you dive, it is about $1,000 you have to pay. So let's say $100, right? So you just get to see, and then but when you move, you get annotations and audio feedback about descriptions about these Dutch and Portuguese ships. That has huge educational value, and then lots of scientists will study these things. So Sri Lanka is really sitting on a gold mine for me. If you can just trigger that, deploying robots. The other is marine resource harvesting, right? So Sri Lanka has nice tropical shallow waters, and then seaweed is there, and lots of nutritious seaweed, right? You don't have to put fertilizer there, it's naturally available, and iodine and all these things. But how much seaweed has gone into our cuisine? Very little, right? So, but these can be harvested in a very methodical way using these underwater robots. So coconut is another thing. Now, I think somebody has to pay 300 rupees per tree to somebody to climb up these trees, and the tree climbers are not in abundance, right? So their price goes up, and then there are not many people who wants to climb up trees to pluck coconuts. So tree climbing robots is something really people can think of. Singular language it has to be embedded in the modern AI revolution. So we have so many Palmyra, I don't know, it's just Puscola, there's a lot of literature written in these ancient scripts, and then they should be trained on LLMs, so that somebody Googling or somebody searching for Sri Lankan history, Sigiriya, I heard that on Sigiriya there's called the Kentapiuk powder, right? So that I think King Kashyapa allowed people to write poems on that, the mirror wall, and then it went on for about 600 years of poetry written on the thing. And then that is the only wall in the whole human civilization where you can see the evolution of a character, right? So if you trace the character R or any character written about 600 years ago to how it evolved over hundreds of years to modern, I think it stopped in Parakrama. I don't know, I'm not really good at history, but writing poems has stopped some time. But it was there about 600 years, I think. So it's a massive resource, how character evolution happens in a language. In one wall, it is there. So this has to be fed into LLMs and then kept in AI domain. And brain modeling and flood predictions, and then these things can be easily done with AI. And then lots of billions of dollars of damage can be avoided. So one of my colleagues, Mahesh Niranjan, is collaborating with Mahesh. So I think next month I'm going to review this thesis. Pravina. So they deployed just a simple thing like, so there's a drone to look at stagnant water and then microbe growth, like dengue, and they can predict using thermal images and some hyperspectral images taken from drones in cities, and then that can prevent dengue, for example. So, okay, so last few minutes I will talk about my company. So I have two companies. One is Permear Sensing. So Permear is like permeating, that is permeating the unknown for the grower. So we are doing precision farming. So if you take coconut, dates and oil, combined coconut and dates is annually a $97 billion industry in the whole world. But they have pest problems, right? So this red palm weevil attack. Every country, about 60 countries, including Sri Lanka, they lose about 10% of the crop due to this pest, right? So red palm weevil. And then sometimes due to over-fertilizing, they lose trees. Sometimes growers don't know that the fact that the roots are like our mouth, right? So if you feed too much, what do you do? Like if you pour water too much, you shut your mouth, right? So you block your mouth. And then roots also do the same, right? So you do too much fertilizing and chemicals, they lock the mouths, right? So root locking. So once the root is locked, they cannot get water, right? So you didn't want too much food, and then you shut your mouth, now you cannot drink too, right? So what happens is the tree goes to dehydration mode, and then it struggles, and then the crop drops, the harvest drops. So many bad things happen. So what we are doing is we use modern technology, the sensors, and then we use drones to look at the absorption spectrum of the leaves, and then we calculate some indexes called NDVI and some other indexes by looking at the near infrared and then infrared and green and blue spectrums, and then we precisely identify what the problem is with the tree, and then we back it up with some ground level sensors like acoustic sensors, electrical impedance and pH level sensors, and then we prescribe per tree. So we maintain a tree level health record. It is like our individual health records, right? So we cannot use the same medicine across different people. We cannot give the same food to different people, right? So we have to be treated individually. So trees do have to be treated individually. We keep a GPS tag, and then we keep a health record per individual tree, and then we tell the grower, this is exactly what this tree needs, and then the other tree needs a different thing. And then that way, Sri Lanka, at least now, Sri Lanka coconut industry is about $400 million industry. By cutting some fertilizer and then by cutting some chemical usage, they can increase the yield to about $2 billion, right? So right now it's about $400 million. Imagine by cutting something, you can improve the yield to about $2 billion, right? And then using some hydration. So we use this aerial imagery and then smart sensors and then tree data, and then we give some confidence to the growers, and our growers love it. So because the owners of most of the coconut states live outside the coconut triangle, so they live in Colombo and some live abroad, and then we give them a dashboard, like they can see individual tree health on their dashboard, so on a digital thing. So, but the point I want to make is these things take time, right? So these days needs patience and a lot of hard work. So I started this company way back in 2017 with a small grant from Imperial, we call Impact Acceleration grants, and then a series of Impact Acceleration grants from UKRI, and then some. We took 3 years to get the first pre-seed money, some investment. And then like 2023, and then this year we raised nearly about 600,000 pounds, and then now we expanded our staff to about 26 staff, and then we So the second company is in Langara. So we wanted to cut down the middleman, right? So we go to the grower and then we buy directly from the grower, and then we have our own supermarket. So our first supermarket was opened in Pallygoodin. So you can see the whole setup is different. By cutting the middleman, we save about 30%. So we give 10% markup, so 20% markup to the grower, and then 10%. So we with that saving, and then we save from transportation, and then we give 20% increased pay to the grower and a 10% discount to this buyer. The customers get fresh vegetables 10% cheaper than other places, and then that way we still make profit, right? And then the other thing we are doing is we are informing the farmers about the demand patterns, and then because we know the demand patterns, and then we use AI technologies to predict like how much carrot is needed from specific places. Like, so for example, Nuwara and Gampola. So the demand is different, right? So we don't mix the carrots, right? So we tell the buyers, this is Nuwara carrot, this is Gampola carrot, right? So, and then this is this area's product, right? So we know exactly, like, if you take mushrooms, we say this is Kentapiuk mushroom. So it has a brand on their own, and then the people buy Kentapiuk or some other village mushroom, like we brand according to the village, the source, right? And then that way we can tell the Kentapiuk growers, okay, this is the demand, and then you grow this much mushrooms over the next 3 months, and guaranteed we buy at this price. This is way, way higher than what they can sell at Dambulla, right? So we create that competition, and then I'm happy to say that our refreshment rate is 2 days. Like every 2 days we have refreshed the supermarket. And then that is how fast the people come to buy, because it's so fresh and then it's guaranteed quality, and then the growers get more money. So that is some two of the companies I found and I'm a director of. So briefly about Imperial, how Imperial helps us as a university. So we have about 119 patents filed every year. This is 2021-22 data, and patents issued is 107. And then this is the interesting figure. So external funding for new startups is about 241 million pounds every year. And then we create about jobs, almost about 6,000 new jobs. And then every year we create about 50 new companies. So that is how intense the activity level is at Imperial. I'm really happy to be a professor at Imperial and then be doing research, doing teaching, and still be running companies on my own. So Imperial Robotics Forum, I was the chair of this Robotics Forum till last year, till I took a sabbatical this year. So we have 40 robotics labs and 44 principal investigators in the forum, and more than 100 postdocs and 200 plus PhD students. And then our annual budget is about 50 million pounds of research funds. It can vary, 60 million sometimes, for robotics research, and 16 companies spun out so far. So what I suggest for Sri Lanka is like the Sri Lankan education system should be really revised to include AI in the curriculum. And then Google DeepMind and Raspberry Pi Foundation, they have come together to make a free curriculum for any developing country. This is a free software available. They can use, or any child can use this. So if you go to experienceai.org and EN, you can download this free curriculum, and then even you can practice free of charge and just Raspberry Pi and then experience AI. So this is especially designed for developing countries. This is because it's so free and it's powerful. So I teach at Imperial. One of my modules is robotics research projects. Students come to my lab and then they make robots and then they test various hypotheses, and then these students are in high demand. So just even before graduation, they are hired. They are pre-booked by Google or Microsoft, Apple, all these big companies, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar Land Rover, BMW, Airbus, Boeing. They come and pre-book these students before graduation because their training is so up to date and then intense and hands-on. So that is something Sri Lankan universities can do easily. And then I have offered my reserved support. I did some curriculum revision. The only university that took my offer is the Jaffna University, the engineering faculty at Kilnochi. So I went there, I spent 2 weeks with the students and really enjoyed. And then I took the students to the nearby a island where they dry fish. And then I asked the students to see the problems of the fishermen. And then they thought, okay, what is there? These are poor fishermen, right? So what is there? We can do AI here. But I probed them, and then after 2 weeks, they understood that there are deep problems, deep technical opportunities available in them. And then I took them to some local curd industries and Palmyra industries. Now their curriculum is like in 1 month before they take up final year projects, the students are released to the villages, and then they go to villages and then they talk to these cottage farm people. At least they get to know about their environment, their villages, right? So their neighborhoods, the fishermen, the curd makers. And then they identify problems, and then they come to the university, and then they start their own things, and then leading to some startup companies. So that's what I'm trying to promote, the entrepreneurship culture, and then I'm working very closely with Hatch Sri Lanka. So that's